This is the infamous Canon M50, and this is the brand new sequel, the Canon R50. How much better is the Canon R50? Should you buy it in the current market? Is it worth upgrading from the Canon M50?
Let's find out.
Let's go ahead and talk about the body design of these cute little guys. The Canon M50 is small, like very small. If you have average to normal size hands, it's gonna be a bit annoying to grip. It's definitely not a huge deal, but it is still something to note.
And with the Canon M50, the button layout is really simple. Everything you need is right here and easy to access. They've got one customizable button and a little dial that's attached to the shutter, which I kind of like. It's easy to use. It's also got a mic jack, which at the time was a huge deal. We talked about it on this channel years ago. But you actually get a real mic input. Yay! We've also got micro HDMI and mini USB. And of course, the EVF, which is really small and low quality, but it works.
The Canon R50 doesn't stray too far away from its father. It is also quite small, although not quite to the extent as the Canon M50. The grip does feel a bit deeper, a bit more comfortable to hold, although my pinky tends to fall off the bottom of the camera still. It is what it is. The button layout of the R50 is more or less identical to the Canon M50, except that the top shutter wheel is substituted out for a shutter dial, which does feel a bit more premium.
And the biggest difference, quite literally, is of course the mount. The M50 has the old-fashioned, out-of-date, discontinued EF-M mount, which is super tiny, and the R50 has the new, forward-facing, super massive RF mount, which means you can use lenses from big cameras like the R6, which we're shooting on right now, like the 24-105, 24-70, or you can use any of the RFS lenses that are now available, like the kit lens. The biggest downside with this new mount system though is that we are losing some of the amazing lenses on the EF-M mount. For example, Sigma actually had a trio of wonderful f1.4 EF-M mount lenses for the M50, so hopefully Canon will make more RFS lenses for this camera.
There's really no contest when it comes to the video specs of these two cameras. The 4K on the Canon M50 is extremely limited. It has a heavy crop and it doesn't allow you to record with dual pixel autofocus. Basically, Canon's subtly encouraging you to record in 1080p instead of 4K. The R50, on the other hand, is able to record in 4K 30 frames per second with no crop, and it has AI autofocus enabled. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised at everything that they were able to shove into such a tiny, cheap camera like the Canon R50. The power of the Canon R50 is largely thanks to the Digic X processor that this camera is wielding, compared to the now 5-year-old Digic 8 processor that the Canon M50 has. Also, bonus feature for the Canon R50, it is able to become a webcam for, say, a Zoom call, if you just plug it in simply over USB-C, which is a nice touch.
Now when it comes to bit depth, the original Canon M50 is limited to only 8-bit recording. That's in both 4K and in 1080p. But the R50 can actually record in 10-bit recording mode. And if you don't know the difference between 8-bit and 10-bit, essentially 10-bit gives us much more color information, which makes the shadows, highlights, and overall color image much richer and more true to life. However, there is a catch with the R50 in that the only way to shoot in 10-bit is to shoot HDR PQ, which is not a setting that really anybody should be using. So that means when you're shooting straight out of the box, even in the 4K mode, you're gonna be limited to 8-bit. So essentially, they're kind of the same.
The Canon R50 is also better when it comes to slow motion. It is able to record 1080p at 120 frames per second, giving you really nice slow motion footage compared to the M50 720p 120 frames per second. Oh yeah, and it also doesn't have autofocus in slow motion. RIP.
Speaking of autofocus, if we switch the M50 in its best performing mode, which is 1080p, and the R50 at its top end mode, which would be 4K, you can actually see that both are doing pretty well. In fact, the M50 for its age is doing pretty good at tracking my face, but I am noticing that the R50 does track much quicker and it's a little bit more sticky, locking onto even my eyeball at certain distances. It's pretty amazing.
Of course, the Canon R50 has the added bonus of having AI shoved into it from other top-of-the-line Canon cameras like the EOS R3. This means that this little camera can distinguish between people, dogs, cats, birds, motorcycles, and cars, which is kind of neat, depending on what you need. Now, chances are if you're looking at buying these two cameras, you're probably newer to cameras in general, and that's plenty fine. These two cameras have decently robust automatic modes that can definitely help you get by for a good bit.
But if you want to be a true professional, or at least act like one, both these cameras can shoot in manual mode. That's also true for photography. You can also shoot full manual mode photography, full manual video, can shoot JPEG and RAW. There's no pro video features like a log profile or RAW video, but both these cameras can shoot in full manual, which means you can adjust your shutter speed, your ISO, your white balance, all those types of things that you would want as a professional are there.
Both cameras do offer digital image stabilization, which does help to remove a little bit of the hand jitters from your image when enabled, but it does still look a little bit jello-y. The R50's image stabilization looks slightly better than the M50's, but the M50 still holds its own.
So the digital stabilization on Canon cameras is pretty good, but in my opinion, I feel like having IS in the lens itself is the best option. It's the smoothest results, and it doesn't have that warpy wobble going on that digital can sometimes provide. So make sure when you're buying your camera, consider buying the kit lens or one of the upgraded lenses that has IS built into it. That will smooth out your footage dramatically.
Here's the deal. The Canon M50 had a great run. Younger Connor had it for a time. He loved it. It was great. But there's a newer, faster, better camera in town, and that's the Canon R50. If you're just kind of a hobbyist, or maybe you're trying to start a YouTube channel, or you just want something better than your iPhone, I think that the R50 is an excellent choice. Even for someone like me who maybe has a better camera like the Canon R6 and I want maybe a backup B camera, this could potentially be a great option because it's so small and I can just shove it in my backpack and take it wherever I need. What do you guys think of the Canon R50? Do you think it's a worthy upgrade to the infamous Canon M50? Let me know down below. And hey, if you picked one up, be sure to check out my beginner's guide on this camera that I'm gonna be making soon, or maybe it's here right now.